Hey, Darth. Would I be able to
Yes.
continue my line of reasoning or questions before you had to leave earlier
Yeah.
today about
Yeah. Sure.
Allinism?
Because this line of Doomkoffs makes my head want to explode.
So
I don't expect people to agree with me. I want there to be vigorous disagreement, but I don't. What I don't want are people who have had frontal lobotomies coming in here pretending that they're reasoning with me.
okay, so I will try my best. However, I can make no promises. So where we last left off, we were discussing God's omnipotence and omniscience in relation to free will. And then a kind of Molinist take on the perspective on those ideas about how God knows the truth of counterfactuals, and somehow we're approaching a resolution therein. But I wanted to push a little bit further on that point. Is that all right with you?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so it seems intuitive to me, and I've done a bit more reading since we've spoken, that God created an initial world state. And if he's aware of the counterfactuals that may arise from that initial world state, he can understand the immediate next world state. Um, so, following through that line, he'd be able to repeatedly do this through simple deduction. P, he has a P, and it therefore implies Q, and is able to move from Q to S to T, etc. Um, if
Yeah.
that seems to be the case,
You better consolidate this gobbledygook.
well, if that seems to be the case, if he's aware of all the truth value of all counterfactuals, then how is it we have free will? It seems to collapse to determinism, in my view.
No, we have the capacity to make free choices uh, because God has made us to be like Him.
Well, if God is aware of what I would do in a certain circumstance and knows my heart and mind, as we've demonstrated earlier through Him knowing whether I'm being genuine in my prayers or requests to Him, would it not then follow He would know my action and the consequence of that action?
God innately knowing what you will choose, and so what?
Well, if that is true at all points in time, how would we describe that as a free decision?
Oh,
My life's
whoa! Didn't
path
we?
is
Did
fully
not?
set.
Didn't I already go over this with you today?
Well, I'm pushing on a different angle. Go ahead.
You're adopting a slightly modified view from the perceptual model of um, of foreknowledge, and you're adopting fatalism. God innately knowing what we will freely choose in any given situation, he incorporates that into his entire seamless plan. All right, and that he knows that I will freely to choose X, and he decides to incorporate that in plan is not fatalism. I
Well,
will do it. Listen carefully.
go ahead.
I'm going to quote William Lane Craig, who has two earned PhDs.
Hmm.
He makes the statement, I will do X, but I will not necessarily do X. And there's a difference. Okay. Right. God knows what I will do, but I will not necessarily do it. I will do it. And whatever I freely choose to do, God just simply knows it and incorporates it into his sovereign plan. Okay. So I'm going to send you a book right now by William Lane
Hmm.
Craig, which is similar to my view. Okay. He advocates something called Molinism, which
Yep.
Calvinists would disagree with. But he goes over extensively the issue of the perceptual model of foreknowledge and the objection that people have who are advocating a type of fatalism, which you seem to be in line with.
Understood. I was in our time apart. I was reading up on the criticisms of Molinism, and it seemed to follow my earlier reasoning.
All
Um,
right, I'm getting the book for you right now. Just give me a second.
okay. Thank you very much.
Wrong folder. All right, read that book, and then it's not a long book; it's an easy read. When you read it, get back to me.
Well, it'll be quite difficult to do during this conversation, but understood.
No, I don't mean right now. No, that God innately knowing what I will freely choose and which He sovereignly ordains to
hmm
be seamlessly integrated with His overall redemptive plan of history is not fatalism. Okay, you're thinking that there's fatalism. Okay, fatalism would be because God knows it, then I will necessarily do it, as opposed to I will do it.
Well, it seems to be a distinction without a difference, in my opinion, but
Okay,
perhaps I'm missing
then
something.
you are. For example, why is it that William Lane Craig says this is an error of modal logic? There's a difference between I will do something versus I necessarily will do it. So, for example, tomorrow I will do X, but it doesn't mean that after tomorrow comes and we have the knowledge of what I freely chose to do, I didn't necessarily do it, but I did
Understood.
do it. Okay,
But
so
if
this is a okay. What I want you to do, is I want you to look up. There are short YouTube videos where William Lane Craig explains this difference. Okay, then after you watch the short video, go read the book. It's an error in modal logic when you say I will. You will necessarily do X versus you will do X.
well, if God knows all counterfactuals, He would also know that the effect that a given environment and state of the world would have on my thoughts and feelings, right?
No, this is irrelevant. The bottom line is read the book.
Oh, well,
Okay.
would okay. I promise I will read the book.
Do you understand that if I will do X, that doesn't mean that I will necessarily do X.
Um, I understand that statement, but
Okay,
in
listen to me.
from
Listen to
from
me.
the perspective of
Suppose
omnipotence.
I listen to
Go
me.
ahead.
Suppose I write down on a piece of paper a proposition. Okay,
hmm
and I write your name, and I say tomorrow you will either eat something for lunch or you will not eat something for lunch. So the proposition will either be true or false from our perspective tomorrow,
Wait.
right?
So
We will
your
then
proposition is what? Eat or not eat? Isn't that universally true?
either tomorrow you will eat something for lunch or you will not eat something for lunch, right? Now, if I write down one of those propositions, you will eat something for lunch, right? And I
Okay.
put it in the paper. And then tomorrow, unbeknownst to you, because you didn't read the proposition, and you eat lunch tomorrow, right? After
hmm
you eat lunch and you open up the envelope, you will then have the realization that the proposition had the value of true. Now, you determine the value of the proposition by experience, or what we call hindsight. Okay, but God can simply innately know what the truth value is of the proposition. God, knowing the truth value of the proposition innately, because he's entirely self-conscious of the world that he creates, that he ordains, okay? Him innately knowing it doesn't necessitate that you do it. He can know it innately, what you will freely choose, that he permits to incorporate into his plan, and he can ordain that you will freely to choose it. But him ordaining it doesn't mean that you will necessarily do it, but that you will do it. And that what you will do, what he innately knows to incorporate certain free choices in his plan, he knows the truth value of that. See, what you're confusing is how is it that God can innately know the truth value of a future tense proposition without looking into the future, or without his foreknowledge necessitating that you will do that?
Well,
And so
I don't think he would. Go
that
ahead.
objection rises out of a state of incredulity. Read the book I sent you, The Only Wise God, because
Given
your objection is based upon fatalism.
Well, given your reasoning here, it doesn't seem like he's looking into the future. It would seem to me he'd just be doing forward chaining, deductive
No.
logic.
Okay.
So he has an initial
Can I
world
ask you a
state.
question? Can you ask you a question? Do you think God can change the future?
God had in this statement, God has set a future.
No, I said, do you? That's not an answer to my question. Do you believe God can change the future?
In my interpretation, I would say yes. He could
Okay.
choose to shape the world how he sees fit.
No. I said, can God change the future?
Uh,
No. The answer
no,
is
because it
no.
hasn't happened yet. Is that
No.
where we're going?
No, because the future is an abstraction.
Okay.
Okay? God can ordain what comes to pass, but that's not the same thing as the future. The
Well,
future is what is yet to come, and then it arrives.
if P implies Q, and we
Can God
ordain
change?
P,
Can God change the past?
nobody can change the present. Correct? He
No,
can permit
that's right. God can determine the future,
what sounds
but God,
deterministic, right?
no, you're not
I'm not
understanding.
trying to be facetious. I'm genuinely trying to follow.
You're being obtuse here. God can determine the future, but God cannot change the future because there's nothing to change. This is not a game of semantics. The future is an abstraction. Okay? Now,
All right.
being that it's an abstraction, it doesn't mean that it's a figment of your imagination. It just means that it's not real yet. So there's no future for God to see. Okay? So God has to know the future by some other means. So it's just as incoherent to say God can change the future as it would be to say God can change the past. Because the past and the future are abstractions from the present.
I find that difficult to settle with your earlier statements on
Okay.
a
All right.
complete different
Okay.
conversation
Read
in
the
relation
book.
to
Read the book
well,
and come back to me.
in relation to relativity.
Thank you for your time. Okay. Wow.